This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and of course, I'm here to bring y'all the 2024 Washington Commanders Training Camp Day 8 breakdown. We got the clips from the practices. I'm gonna break down every single position group. First of all, this video is sponsored by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. We have a lot to talk about today, man. We have another Tyler Owens interception. What have I been telling y'all about Tyler Owens? Stop playing with my boy. You have wide receivers breaking ankles all over practice today. I don't know what's going on with the DBs. We have some injury updates big time, especially with Derek Forrest, who a lot of people are curious about, and Andrew Wiley, and also the implications, where their injuries are right now. Do those guys have a chance to start at all, make the team, even in Derek Forrest's situation right now? And then we also have starting spots being solidified. Brandon Coleman starting left tackle already. Mike Sanford still your starting slot corner already. Is that confirmed? And so we're gonna get into all of that and more, but before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Really appreciate y'all for staying tuned, because again, last night's video, I had to break down day 7 of training camp practice. That video didn't come out till technically like 12 something this morning, and the fact that y'all went out there and still watched that even though I came out with that video so late, that is big time love, man. So make sure you leave a like on this video. Make sure you leave whatever comments you have, any concerns. We're gonna get into this video right now though, instead of wasting even more of y'all time. Let's get it. Adam. And of course, before we get into practice, I gotta bring y'all some updates concerning the team. First of all, shouts out to Johnny Grassi at Commanders Grassi on Twitter. He tweeted, "Happy Friday, Commanders fam. Over an hour away from the start of practice, and what a crowd, as you're seeing on the screen right now." And shouts out to Josh Taylor, because he pointed out the fact that this might be the most fans ever so far. We already know that this training camp has been full, and this is probably the most crowded that training camp has ever been for the Breaking the Go, at least from a long time that any of us can remember of fans being able to attend practice. But even with this training camp session already, this training camp offseason 2024 being the most crowded ever, Josh Taylor says that this may be the most crowded day of all of those crowded days, just to point that out. And then shouts out to Kay Adams of the Up and Adams show. She's going around the NFL, and she made her stop to the Washington Commanders practice today. She already went to the Rams, the Patriots, then the Eagles, and the Jets, and the Bills. Then today are the Commanders, then tomorrow are the Steelers, then the Bengals, then the Panthers, then the Packers, then the Texans, the Bears, Giants, Dolphins, 49ers, Broncos, and Chargers. That is not the entire NFL. So she has a select few teams. It looks like around somewhere like half of the NFL, just about. And we're one of those teams that she wanted to make sure that she went and saw. So shouts out to her, man. And she even interviewed Dan Quinn afterwards as well. So if you want to go check that out, make sure you do, because she asked Dan Quinn some pretty interesting questions, and he gave some pretty interesting answers. She even specifically asked him straight up, why is Jaden Daniels not named the starter yet? All of that type of stuff. So make sure you go check that out. But Kay Adams wasn't the only person that was notable at the practice. We had Wale there as well. Apparently, he was down next to by the fans at one point in time in the section with the fans. Shouts out to Josh Taylor for pointing that out. Everybody thought that was pretty cool. But even cooler than that was how happy the Commanders players were to see Wale at today's practice. I mean, there's clips of him dapping up everybody. Bobby Wagner, Brian Robinson. I mean, literally just chopping it up with them. Big daps, hugs, smiling, laughing, and things like that. And then he even took some pictures with Jaden Daniels afterwards, but he even took some time to speak to some of the players like Jaden Daniels and Bobby Wagner. I thought that was really cool. You also had Nats third baseman Trey Lipscomb there at practice today, and Scott Abraham interviewed him. He said, quote, "It's cool to come out here and watch other athletes do their thing," unquote. Pretty standard quote, but I like the fact that DC teams are supporting each other in this way. Now moving on, Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, of course, watching practice. Adam Peters was at practice again today, and it seems like he's been at maybe every practice so far this training camp, at least most of them. I mean, when was the last time we had a general manager pull up to practices this often? But then again, before Adam Peters, when was the last time we had a general manager? And then even when we did have a general manager, did we even as fans want him at the practices at all? But it's still great to see how hands-on Adam Peters is with this team. I love it. He does not have to be at these practices. I love the fact that he wants to be and that he is so consistently. Again, if he hasn't been there at every single training camp practice, he's at least been there for most of them. But I'd be willing to bet that he's probably been there for every one. But it's just gotten to a point where people don't even really point it out. He's just another fixture there as somebody that's permanently going to be a part of training camp practices, always watching and observing and things like that. And then also, just to update, the first people that were out in the field today, Mitch Tisler didn't do it today, but shouts out to my boy Mason Kinahan. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. Of course, he pointed out the fact that John Ridgway, Sam Hartman, and Jonathan Allen were the first three out. I'm guessing they came out at the same time. Now, that first of all, that's really weird because Bryson Tremaine has been the first one out to practice 6 out of the first 7 days. Again, we're day 8 today, so now it's 6 out of 8. So that's already weird. But then usually when Sam Hartman comes out there, it's with Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels and Sam Hartman are like side by side. So it was really interesting to see that it was like a combination of John Ridgway, Sam Hartman, and John Allen today. And this is not something that's like very important, but again, this is just like a running thing I'm gonna keep updating y'all on. As long as they give me the updates about who was there at practice first, I'm going to give y'all the updates. I just think it's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure people out there appreciate it, so I'm gonna keep doing it. Now moving on to the injury part of practice before we really dive into like what Dan Quinn said, and then we're gonna get to what actually happened in practice. Of course, y'all know how these videos go. Y'all been watching them so far the entire training camp. I've been doing breakdowns for these every day, giving y'all the clips, telling y'all what's happening in practice, breaking it down, giving y'all like roster analysis and things like that. So this is pretty standard for every video that we've been doing. And so first of all, apparently it's a hamstring injury that's bothering Derek Forrest right now. Dan Quinn said that Derek Forrest, who wasn't at practice Thursday either and will not practice today, did not practice today, is dealing with a hamstring injury. He doesn't expect it to be a long-term deal, and he hopes to have him back in individual drills soon, so we'll see. But even before he got hurt and whatever hamstring injury that he's dealing with right now, he was already third string. And so now that he's out with injury, that's making his situation even worse as far as, I mean, we can go ahead and kill the chances of him potentially starting on this defense. I think that's long gone. I mean, of course, never say never. There's a lot of time between now and then once we get to the regular season, that first game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. But at this point, Derek Forrest, like, is he going to make the team? I think he definitely should. Me, as in Rico of Street Scores, feels like he should make this team because he was just a starter a couple of years ago. He showed flashes, he showed potential. And yeah, maybe we added some better safeties in the meantime. Percy Butler has developed. I mean, we have a really deep safety group. I feel like it's arguably one of the deepest position groups on the team. I've been talking about this for months now. I feel like the safety group is probably our most underrated group on the entire team, especially the defense. And so it's not even necessarily like Derek Forrest is bad. It's just that we've just gotten better. And again, I still felt like he should easily at least be with the second stringers. It's really like wild to even me that he's out there with the third stringers. But I'm just saying his chances of starting right now are not looking good. And I'm assuming he will make the team, but these injuries aren't helping his case. Then Andrew Wiley-wise, Dan Quinn updated the fact that he's still dealing with tightness. We don't even know where the tightness is being dealt with right now, but apparently there's some tightness. Though he will be back at practice in a limited role soon, the tightness appears to, and JP Finley brought up a good point, that tightness appears to be the 2024 training camp ambiguous injury term of choice, because we keep hearing that. We've been hearing that for multiple players now. It's just tightness. They're just dealing with tightness. I think that's pretty interesting. Dan Quinn also said that they're looking at Andrew Wiley at tackle, and that's it, which is really interesting because he played guard with the Chiefs before we brought him here to come play tackle. So again, that's really interesting. That means that if he doesn't start at right tackle for you, he's not starting, point blank, period. They only see him as a tackle. So it sounds like he doesn't have much of a chance to even compete for the starting left guard spot right now. Well, he better hurry up and get back healthy as soon as possible before he falls behind the tackle competition, which seems to be the only competition that he's a part of right now. This may not even necessarily be a situation where they feel like Wiley is bad at guard. I just personally think that they like Nick Allegretti that much, and that basically the entire interior offensive line is already decided and finalized. Nick Allegretti, left guard. You have Tyler Biotish at center and Samuel Cosme at right guard. That's what it feels like to me. I feel like it's more so a compliment to the other guys in the offensive offensive line room than like a situation where they just think Andrew Wiley's a terrible guard. I don't think they see it that way. I just think the guards that we do have are just that good, and there's really no hope for him even trying to compete there with those other guys. Now moving on to some things that Dan Quinn said before the practice. First of all, today's practice featured a lot of run game and some end of game situation things. Like they worked on 4-minute drills to basically close out the game and things like that. I thought that was pretty interesting. That we also continue one-on-one drills as well. This is the second time this week. Second time throughout this entire offseason, training camp, whatever you want to say. This is the second time in 2024 that we've had one-on-ones. And Zach Selby said that both sides of the ball brought plenty of energy today as well. We're even going to talk about how things are starting to get a little chippy between the players. We'll talk about that a little later. Dan Quinn also said that he's very pleased with the Commanders safety group. Good communication. He expects to know a lot more about his concerns in coming days. And JP Finley pointed out the fact that I imagine Aaron Rodgers next week will give them a good idea, unquote. And I agree. The reason I'm including this in the Dan Quinn part of this instead of like the safety group, because I'm really just trying to point out the fact that, again, we're going up against the Jets in joint practices next week. And so that's going to be a great test for our safety room. I feel like that's also going to be a great test for our offensive line with the defense and the defensive line that they have. I feel like that's going to be a great test to really see, is Brandon Coleman actually ready? And then also we have Kay Adams, Wale, and the Nats third baseman here at practice today. But again, yesterday we had Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo, and they interviewed Dan Quinn after practice, so I wasn't able to necessarily include that in my video breakdown yesterday. But the quote that came from it was, we know what type of place this can be once we get this thing rolling. Because they also interviewed Jonathan Allen. He basically broke down the difference from the old regime on Inside the Training Camp Live with Ian Rappaport and those guys, and it's safe to say that he likes this team a lot more than the previous one. Now let's get into the offense, starting with quarterbacks. Josh Taylor pointed out the fact that just offensively in general, they started out with a lot of run game stuff. We're definitely starting with the run game things earlier this offseason than we did last season. You saw what happened. We ran the ball less than any other NFL team last year under Eric Bieniemy being our offensive coordinator, and now you're seeing this offseason we're getting to the run game stuff way sooner, or in the offseason and training camp in general. And so hopefully that's like a foreshadowing of we will run the ball and we will be a balanced offense. I'm really excited about that. Josh Taylor also pointed out the fact that Jaden Daniels had a nice QB draw up the middle early on in team drills, and he also said that he really likes how he waits for lanes and hits the jets. So Jaden Daniels is showing patience as a runner as well. When it's a QB draw, it's a drawn up play. Cliff Kingsbury called it in. This is not Jaden Daniels scrambling. This is a play where Jaden Daniels, after you hike this ball, you're running with it. And he even still shows patience with those runs as well. I'm really excited to hear that. Then my boy Linnell Willingham pointed out the fact that Jaden Daniels threw a really nice ball to Zach Ertz for a nice gain. And he also said that Jaden Daniels has shown great anticipation on these crossing routes, and he's able to hit guys in stride. He's throwing it before the window is even all the way open and things like that. I'm loving what I'm hearing. Linnell also pointed out the fact that Jaden Daniels threw to Terry McLaurin for a nice gain on a back shoulder ball. And that's the thing that, like, if you had to pick one superpower of Jaden Daniels coming out of the draft, it's his back shoulder ball ability, the touch on those, the deep fades to the corner, the sideline corner, the end zone, and things like that. That's what he's elite at. That's just that one thing that is like, I don't know how he's great at that and how he's so efficient at it, but he is. And now you're starting to see that be shown in practice, and hopefully that translates to NFL games, and that's not just a college thing for him. What we're seeing in practice so far, it sounds like that just may be who he is. That wasn't just a college Jaden Daniels thing. That's just the Jaden Daniels thing in general. Linnell continued on to say that they've worked hard on that in camp, but Terry hasn't necessarily gotten those opportunities yet. Now he is. So now they're starting to really unlock that chemistry with each other, and it's really uncoverable. We're going to talk about that a little later when we get to the Terry McLaurin, well, really the wide receiver part of this video just in general. Then Zach Selby pointed out the fact that Daniels looked really sharp in the last 11-on-11 drills. Only had one incompletion, and it was really only just a near miss. Also had a really impressive bobbling catch by Terry McLaurin near the sideline. We're going to talk about that a little later, where Terry McLaurin had a one-handed catch that Jaden Daniels threw towards him. But Zach Selby said in this article later after tweeting that as far as an update goes on how Jaden Daniels looked in practice, he said he looked sharp, which has become really the norm for the rookie. I love hearing that. He was in command of the huddle. Love hearing that. Made checks at the line of scrimmage and made some strong throws. Great, great, great. Thank you. He completed 4 of his 5 passes during the 11-on-11 drills, one of them at least. He finding Jahan Dotson, Zach Ertz, Terry McLaurin, and Olamide Zaccheaus. His only miss was a pass intended for Luke McCaffrey, but it was placed in a spot where only McCaffrey could have caught it, so it wasn't like a terrible throw. There was a chance for Luke McCaffrey to catch it, and it was thrown that way so that the DB had no chance of interrupting it. So I just thought that was that even though it isn't an incompletion, that's still a pretty decent throw. I'm not mad at it. Then Mason Kinahan said that for his final stat line to finish the practice, 5 of 8, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a lot of run game and special teams works today. He ended that tweet with that just to emphasize, like, yeah, Jaden Daniels didn't have any touchdowns today. Basically saying that, like, that's because they worked on a lot of run game stuff and they gave special teams way more work than they typically do. Like, we'll talk about that very soon, but I mean, they had them out there quite often. And Mason Kinahan even provided like an actual graphic of his notes. He said, here's every Jaden Daniels play from today's practice. Again, more focus on the run game, but still good work from the QB1. So 11 on 11s, he had a pass complete short to the right to Brian Robinson, then incomplete deep middle to De'Ami Brown, then a run up the middle for 2 to 3 yards, then he completed a screen right to Jahan Dotson, then he completed over the middle to Zach Ertz for 15 yards, then he had a completion to Terry McLaurin to the sideline one-handed, so I'm believing that that's the back shoulder throw that Terry McLaurin corralled in. I'm assuming that's probably the same play. Then he was complete short to right Olamide Zaccheaus. Then he finished up with an incomplete pass deep left to Tinsley, and then an incomplete pass over the middle that was broken up. Again, these are according to my boy Mason Kinahan's notes. Make sure you follow him on Twitter because he's trying to go to every practice that he can, and I really appreciate the intel that he provides. Now moving on to the running backs, and I'm really excited about the running backs, man. You see Austin Eckler on your screen right now doing what he does. Again, last practice, one of the highlights of the entire camp was a Jaden Daniels throw to Terry McLaurin for a touchdown against Emmanuel Forbes, and the only reason that play was even possible was because Austin Eckler did a great job of picking up a blitz against Bobby Wagner, the Bobby Wagner, with his apparently 89 overall jump attribute, which is just crazy, man, and that's funny. But also moving on, Brian Robinson was soaking up a lot of knowledge from offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. Like, they were just sitting, just talking one-on-one to the side by themselves, nobody else around. I thought that was pretty cool. And then staying with Brian Robinson, the first play of 4-minute drills, again, this is like a situational football thing that they've introduced today to this team as far as training camp goes, really the entire offseason goes. Brian Robinson broke through the middle untouched for a really big gain. I love to hear it. Josh Taylor even shouted out the fact that Brian Robinson had a huge run up the middle and it would have been a touchdown for sure, and Jaden Daniels was the one that ran down the field and hyped them up afterwards. I'm assuming other players did, but I love to hear that our quarterback is doing that even for a play that he's not necessarily involved in. He doesn't get any statistical credit for it. He just handed the ball off to him, and Brian Robinson and the offensive line did the rest, and Jaden Daniels is still running down there extremely hyped with everybody else. Shouts out to my boy Serge the Shooter as well on Twitter, because he's the one getting a lot of the great snapshots and pictures they come from training camp, from Commanders training camp and things like that. So make sure you follow him at least for that. But he also tweeted, Brian Robinson seeing the field very well at camp, all camp. Just ripped one up the middle, untouched, would have been an easy touchdown. And honestly, my first thought was reading about that big run that Brian Robinson had and everybody emphasizing how untouched he was. Yeah, that's great vision. I love the fact that we're hearing that his vision is improving. That's big time. Because, I mean, really strong, very underrated in the receiving game. Soft hands, can make guys miss out in the open field occasionally as well. That vision is improving. Brian Robinson is going to be a problem. But my main thing is, I feel like that's more of a compliment to the offensive line. And I thought it was hilarious too, because Daryl Tapp, our defensive lines coach, was very upset about this play and was very loud when addressing the defensive line. Well, specifically one person. We'll get there a little later. There was specifically one person that was getting chewed out about allowing that Brian Robinson big run up the middle that would have been a touchdown. Basically, all of the blame is really going to one guy because that was his run fit. That was his responsibility. Again, we're going to get to that soon, but we're going to talk about that later. when we get to the defensive line part of this video. But continuing with running backs, undrafted free agent running back Austin Jones, shouts out to Brian Colbert Jr. on Twitter. He said that guy just broke off a huge run as well. Impressive speed and explosiveness from the former USC Trojan. And you got to remember that he played under Cliff Kingsbury at USC last year. So this is a guy that you may want to keep your eye on this preseason. Not necessarily saying that he's going to make the team, but there's a connection and a bond to our current offensive coordinator who's going to have a big say in who makes this roster or not. We'll see if Austin Jones continues to make plays. Hey, man, watch out. And then, before we move on to the wide receivers, I gotta ask y'all, man, are you looking for a new book this football season? It should be BetUS for show. Stop playing with me. First of all, they have the fastest payouts in the industry. I know y'all want y'all money fast. I know y'all want that. And also, when you sign up through me with my link in the description and the pinned comment, you can get a 125% sign up bonus up to $2,000 or even 200% crypto deposit bonus with your first deposit. Make sure you go check out that BetUS link in the description below. Your boy Street Scores gonna hook you up every time. And it's also a fast and easy deposit and withdrawal process, so you ain't got to worry about that part. And they have 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year. I mean, they're always there for you, even when you're off of work. You take the weekends off, they don't. They're there for you whenever you need them. They also have live wagering on all major games, all of them, name it, they got it. And to me, they have the best betting variety in the business, just to let you know. And even if you somehow miss on your bets for any reason, you can even get 10% back on your net losses twice a year. That's forgiveness. You know we all love that. And did you know that BetUS even gives you your own personal account manager if you need it? Now, who else is doing that, man? Come on now. So y'all my people, they my people. Y'all need to rock with each other, plain and simple. Off top, go and hit that website for show. Again, link in the description. Make sure you go click that link to sign up, man. Let's get to these receivers, though. Shouts out to Scott Abraham for sending and tweeting out this video right here of Luke McCaffrey. And with it, he tweeted, raise your hand if you're excited to have Luke McCaffrey in Washington. Commanders wide receiver Luke McCaffrey has an opportunity to make some plays in this offense, and I completely agree. We just talked yesterday extensively about how freakishly athletic he is, even more athletic than his brother Christian McCaffrey is. And I showed y'all the relative athletic score in other videos where Luke McCaffrey is not only more athletic according to relative athletic score, that system, as a receiver, but even when you switch them both to running backs, he still had a higher score. So this is a guy with a lot of potential. I'm really excited. And I mean, the fact that he pancaked my dog Tyler Owens yesterday shows that he's not just a freak athlete. Then you also have him running with run game coordinator and running backs coach Anthony Lynn to start to grow into somewhat of like a Curtis Samuel, Debo Samuel role for this team. But then he can also contribute as a blocker, which will allow the other guys to be able to produce, like Jaden Daniels or our running backs, to contribute scrambling, running, whatever. That's going to be big time, man. I don't think y'all understand. That's a very underrated trait of a wide receiver, to be able to block. Then you also had a moment earlier in 1v1s where Terry McLaurin beat Emmanuel Forbes on a short curl, and Forbes hit the deck, made Forbes fall, ankles broken. Then you also had Mitchell Tinsley, who also broke a defender's ankles in one-on-ones, and Nikki Javala tweeted, I won't say who though. And then the Commanders had the nerve, after she tweeted that, after practice, to come and actually show a clip of Mitchell Tinsley doing it, and then naturally you're gonna see who it actually is in the video. And so based off of that clip that the Commanders themselves uploaded to social media, I'm seeing the number 6, and that's Kiyu Blue Kelly, for those of y'all who are wondering. So basically, Mitchell Tinsley broke Kiyu Blue Kelly's ankles soon after Terry McLaurin broke Emmanuel Forbes's. And so just to let y'all know, I just wanted to make sure y'all were aware of whose ankles have been getting broken today. But hey, man, what's going on with the ankles for our DBs today, man? Because those weren't even just the only 2, which is just absolutely crazy. Shouts out the Commanders realm for tweeting this. After last season, I was pretty sure De'Ami Brown was going to be a long shot to make the team under a new staff, but there doesn't seem to be a ton of pulse in the back end of the receiving room. A lot of camp to go, but I can't identify anyone that's going to supplant them. And there have been, admittingly, a lot of receivers that have been making plays, but Dyami Brown has also done a fine job of standing out himself. Again, arguably the best blocking receiver on the team. Dan Quinn even spoke before yesterday's practice and emphasized the fact that Dyami Brown is one of our better receivers at getting open during scramble drills. When Jaden Daniels is trying to escape the pocket and extend the play, Dyami Brown is one of the more dependable receivers as far as making sure he finds a way to get creative and open. Once the X's and O's are over with, we're over 5 seconds into a play, the chess match is done. This is just who's the playmaker. Dyami Brown's been that guy. Then you also had Olamide Zaccheaus making a great catch over Michael Davis, and I believe that was from Jaden Daniels, like we mentioned earlier. But then the reason I'm including this now in the receiver portion is because my Georgia dog, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, that's not a good look. That interception that Tyler Owens ended up getting, and we're definitely going to talk about that extensively once we get to the safety part of this video, but apparently the pass that he got was because Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint just let the ball slip through his hands. Shouts out to Tyler Owens for always finding a way to be around the ball. Again, we're going to talk about that later, but Tyler Owens, one of the guys I'm rooting for the most, has a great play, but sadly it's at the expense of one of my Georgia dogs that I'm also rooting for. It is what it is, man. It's a Rico fan favorite, a Rico favorite player on the team. Violence versus another Rico's favorite on the team situation type of thing. And then on team drills in 11 on 11s and things like that, apparently Terry McLaurin had a really nice one-handed catch along the sideline with, like we talked about earlier, from Jaden Daniels. I believe that may have been the back shoulder throw. And I mean, again, one-handed catch, bobbled a little bit, but still one-handed catch on the sideline is elite stuff. Then later on, Bryson Tremaine had a really good catch on a really long throw from Sam Hartman in 7 on 7s once the defensive and offensive lines left the field. Just basically quarterback, running backs, receivers, tight ends, and things like that. Bryson Tremaine, hey man, daily situation where we're starting to hear his name making plays. And that was Ben Standig that tweeted about Bryson Tremaine with that information. Then next up, you have Zach Selby talking about Bryson Tremaine as well. So his name is starting to buzz among the media members at the Commanders practices. He's starting to stand out because Zach Selby said Bryson Tremaine flashed yet again with a catch deep downfield as the second-year pro continues to stack together solid days. There may be something there with our only tall receiver. There may be something growing there. Now moving on to the tight ends, shouts out to my boy Serge the Shooter again. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. He pointed out the fact that Zach Ertz might be Daniels' go-to guy. And when we signed him in free agency, before we even drafted Jaden Daniels, the assumption was, or at least the hope, was that Zach Ertz would be the go-to guy, the when in doubt. This guy will always be open for you for whoever we drafted at quarterback. And now it's looking like that chemistry is starting to build very early. Only by day 8 of training camp, people are starting to notice that Jaden Daniels to Zach Ertz is the when in doubt. This is going to be super consistent. This is going to be super dependable. I know for a fact he's going to be open. If everything is chaotic and in disarray, I know I got Zach Ertz open somewhere. And that's a great thing for Jaden Daniels. Having a safety blanket like that, a veteran like Zach Ertz, as long as he stays healthy, that should be deadly, especially on third down situations. When in doubt, Zach Ertz will convert it for you, Jaden Daniels. You're good to go. And then Serge the Shooter also pointed out the fact that McLaurin gon' get his for show, but if you play fantasy, Zach Ertz is going to be a steal. Hey, man, just some advice throwing out there. If you're doing fantasy league, Zach Ertz, start to buy that stock early. And then shouts out to Scott Abraham for tweeting this video of Ben Sinnott right here. And I'm really excited about Ben Sinnott, man. I know he's had a few drops so far in training camp, but he's also had a couple of one-handed catches and some amazing catches. So he's had highs and lows. He hasn't just been kind of in the middle, but I've been hearing and seeing some moments where he's been blocking fairly well. I'm really excited about his potential and versatility in his offense. Maybe we have to wait later than week 1 expecting him to just come out and start balling out immediately, but hey, that's why we have Zach Ertz here and he can take his time to develop. I'm really excited about that. Then offensive line wise, Dan Quinn said before practice that Brandon Coleman stood out to him on the offensive line yesterday. He had a strong practice for the rookie, very strong practice for anybody. Again, a lot of people were saying yesterday that Brandon Coleman looked like our best offensive lineman with Samuel Cosmi as a close second, but Brandon Coleman was the best in one-on-ones, and when they even moved the team drills, he was great. And he said that he was also impressed by Jonathan Allen, Johnny Newton, and Deron Payne on the defensive line, but we'll get there later. But he went out of his way to point out the fact that Brandon Coleman has looked really good. Zach Selby in his article after practice said that the Commanders have encouraged competition at every level this offseason, no matter the position group. And Brandon Coleman has certainly jumped at that opportunity. He still has more steps to take, but if he can claim the job as his own, it would solve several short-term problems for the Washington's offensive line and validate the front office's decision to pass on several of the perceived top tackle prospects in the draft to take them, which takes me to my point. Now, does that decision to wait until the third round to take a tackle, does it look as crazy now? This draft has a lot of potential to end up being a legendary draft here, man, because I'm very sure that Jaden Daniels has a certain floor to him, but also a really high ceiling. But I want to talk floors, because like how good guys we can pretty much bet on being. I feel it's very safe to assume that Jaden Daniels would at least be a top 20 quarterback in the NFL, at least. I think Mike Sanderstill is going to be a top 3 slot corner at least in the NFL. I'm very excited about Johnny Newton. I think he's going to be extremely impactful. I think he has Pro Bowl potential to him. I think Ben Sinnott, once he finally gets things going and he learns how to catch more consistently, that versatility is going to shine. He's going to be a big part of this offense. He's going to ball out as well. I think this, and we haven't even talked about Jordan McGee or even Luke McCaffrey. I think this is going to end up being a really good draft class. Now, of course, I do want to point out the fact that they haven't played a single regular season game yet, but like I keep saying in all of these videos, my point always is everything that can possibly go well up to this point, like as great as they could potentially be, the biggest compliments that we could potentially give them at this point, August 2nd, in their rookie training camps, they've exceeded expectations. They haven't done anything yet in regular season games, but everything that we hope for them to be at development wise and maturity wise up to this point, they've matched it and more. So I'm very excited. I'll at least take that and be happy with that for now. I'm really excited to see what they look like in the preseason. Well, even just as soon as joint practices, but especially that regular season. Really excited there. And then Dan Quinn also talked about Samuel Cosmi. He said, quote, he's someone that has impressed me as well. And I also want to point out the fact, shouts out to JP Finley, that Samuel Cosmi is going into the final year of his rookie deal. Can we please sign him long term? Dan Quinn said that he's been impressed by Samuel Cosmi's consistency, especially, quote, you would have thought that he'd been a guard for a really long time. His ability to stay square, pull, he's someone that has really impressed me, unquote. So Dan Quinn is more so impressed by the fact that, first of all, Samuel Cosmi is consistent and just how advanced he is at playing guard, nuance and veteran-wise and technique-wise and all that type of stuff, with the fact that he didn't just play guard his entire life. I mean, even dating back to college, tackle. Even the first couple of years here, tackle. So I'm right with Dan Quinn. Samuel Cosmi took that move to guard, and I think he's a potential future All-Pro sooner rather than later. Then also another update from practice, just to let you know, Trent Scott and Brandon Coleman were the starting tackle tandem today. Again, Andrew Wiley out with injury, but for whatever reason, Trent Scott is getting the starting nod at right tackle over Cornelius Lucas as of today. Doesn't mean that that's just automatically, that's the depth chart that's finalized, Trent Scott over Cornelius Lucas at all. Not saying that, but today, that's what it was. Brandon Coleman has been the starting left tackle for you for the past couple of days now. We might as well just go ahead and announce that. That just seems to be a thing. But the Trent Scott Cornelius Lucas battle right now, right tackle, while Andrew Wiley is hurt, really interesting the fact that Trent Scott is over Cornelius Lucas. We'll see what happens. And Cornelius Lucas did miss practice yesterday due to a personal matter, but he returned today. We'll see what happens. And then Phidarian Mathis, who we're about to talk about real soon when we get to the defensive line part of this video, was the one that got chewed out by Daryl Tapp. I'm pretty sure most of y'all probably assume that. We'll get there. But speaking of Phidarian Mathis, the reason I'm including this in the offensive line part of this video is because he and Tyler Biadasz got into it after a snap at some point in practice today. And Dan Quinn emphasized, really sternly emphasized, that they do not want fights in camp. I know Deron Payne and Samuel Cosmi were getting a little heated during 1v1s yesterday, but it never got out of hand. So I'm hoping that whatever the Phidarian Mathis and Tyler Biadasz moment was didn't get too out of hand, because I haven't heard anybody else talk about it except for my boy Linnell Willingham. So I'm assuming that maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe if Dan Quinn talks about it tomorrow morning, maybe it was worse than what we thought. But there is a very thin line between passionate competition and just straight up wasting everybody's time. But you got to teeter that line consistently. I know it's hard, but you got to do it. But especially in the trenches. I mean, they're pretty much fighting all day, every day. But so that's a very thin line. But I'm hearing that also throughout the team, tensions are starting to rise a little higher a little bit right now, just in general, throughout the entire team, not even just the trenches. So this team may just be ready to hit another team. Like, we need to keep it classy in these joint practices, of course, and these preseason games. But you can tell that these guys are ready to hit people whose well-beings do not benefit the Commanders at all. Like, I'm not saying that they're ready to deliberately hurt people, but I'm sure that they are tired of having to overthink how not to hurt people with every play, every rep, every tackle, every sumo match in the trenches, all of that type of stuff. They really just can't wait to take the training wheels off, take off the bubble wrap, and just mentally play free. I know they can't wait for that, so I'm really excited to see how they perform in joint practices against the Jets as well. Now, moving on to the defensive line part of this video, Dan Quinn, before practice, said that he thought the interior defensive line had a really solid day yesterday, even in spite of Brandon Coleman and Samuel Cosmi looking elite yesterday. And again, like we mentioned earlier, he was more so impressed, and he pointed out the fact that Jonathan Allen, Johnny Newton, and Daron Payne stood out to him. The fact that Johnny Newton's name is in that mix already is big time. And then you also have this clip right here of Daryl Tapp being the most vocal coach on the team. Shouts out to Linnell Willingham for pointing this out. Daryl Tapp consistently seems to be the most vocal coach on this team, at least the loudest, always bringing the juice.
Let's go. Right there. Hey, go. Oh!
And shouts out to @JDanielsMVP because he brings up a great point. Daryl Tapp is one of the best hires Adam Peters made over the offseason, and it's just a sneak peek of what's to come. D-line is finally revitalized and is feeding off of Daryl Tapp's energy and strong leadership. I completely agree. And also, I want to point out the fact that in that clip that you saw, Johnny Newton did stand out a little bit. I'm not going to lie. His ball get off and strong punch. Hey, man. That boy, he looks like he's going to be something serious. The fact that he's standing out amongst all of those other really good defensive linemen that we have, I mean, I know it's just little individual practice drills with the coaches, still really interesting, something to definitely build on. But back to Daryl Tapp, speaking of him, because again, he's very vocal, even in individual drills when it's just a defensive line by themselves, not even going up against offensive linemen. But then you had that moment where Brian Robinson was able to break out for like a 40-plus yard touchdown run. And like I briefly mentioned earlier, that was for Darian Mathis, who took the blame for it. Daryl Tapp was, Linnell Willingham described it as barking at the defensive line to get off their blocks after that touchdown run that Brian Robinson had. And Felix was the one that pointed out the fact, my boy Felix Trammell, make sure you follow him on Twitter as well. He's the one that pointed out the fact that it was for Darian Mathis that was out of position, and that's when Daryl Tapp got on his head and really got after him for it. Now, linebacker wise, I don't really have any notable updates there. I apologize. So we're going to go ahead and move on to cornerback. Now, cornerback wise, Dan Quinn mentioned before practice that Mike Sainristil, he loves him for his consistency. He said life moves fast inside, and Sainristil has been consistently strong. That is very high praise and also very notable because, yeah, I mean, outside corner, you could argue it's tough because I guess like the best receivers are usually out there, but you at least have the boundary. The sideline is like an additional defender for you. In the slot, you're on an island. Like, that's as much on an island as you can get. That's it. There's really no other real help there. And you have to, as a corner, you're typically somewhere on the outside. So again, with the boundary as like an additional defender, you only really have to worry about another side like a lot. Whereas as a slot corner, you're in the middle of the field basically. You have to worry about every side. And the fact that Mike Sainristil is already showing how strong he can be at doing that as a rookie in his rookie training camp, August 2nd, we haven't even gotten to our first preseason game, is very notable. I'm really happy to hear that. Ken Johannesson even tweeted after practice, I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Sainristil is the most exciting player on defense this year. Also, he could be a legitimate candidate for an NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. And if you watched my video from last night, I said the same thing, man. I'm telling you, me and my boy Ken Johannesson are right on the same page with that one, man. I'm telling you, great minds think alike. Then you have Ref the District, and they talked about this on their show, and they even tweeted this on Twitter. Make sure you follow them as well. They said second round pick Mike Sainristil looks to be everything Dan Quinn and Adam Peters hoped for. Stoner thinks impact may go largely unnoticed unless you look closely, and the exact quote from Stoner was, his box score might only say 2 tackles and 1 pass breakup. Then you watch the tape and see he had the slot on complete lockdown, and the quarterback just never looked his way, and that's why his stats are so low. I mean, that's a great case scenario for us. And then in practice today, even after all of that hype, I didn't even tell you what Mike Sanford still even did in practice today. So at some point, he had a near interception against Jamison Crowder, and I believe it was one-on-one drills. And again, like I emphasized a lot last night, well, earlier this morning, whatever you want to call it, in my breakdown of day 7 of practice that happened yesterday, the drills and one-on-ones are literally set up for the receivers to win. It is quarterback and receiver versus corner. It's literally set up for the corner to fail. And if a corner even gets a pass incompletion, that's a huge win, let alone a near interception. So Mike Sanford still is basically balling. Benjamin St-Juste also had a pass breakup, just like Sanford still had working against De'Ami Brown. De'Ami Brown's been having a good camp, but Benjamin St-Juste also has as well. As long as he's been healthy, he's been hooping. Now moving on to the safeties. Apparently, Dan Quinn said that Jeremy Chinn has done an excellent job so far this offseason. He also emphasized, quote, he's got real speed and length, unquote. Again, the players I'm most intrigued by, Jeremy Chinn, Armani Rogers, and Tyler Owens. The thing that they all have in common, freak athletes, arguably the 3 most athletic players on the entire team, just to let you know. And speaking of Tyler Owens, you only knew it was a matter of time before we got to the safety group, so I can talk about my dog. So first of all, before the interception even happened, Mason Kinahan tweeted, Tyler Owens is massive. Just straight up, that's all he wanted to say. This is before practice even really got kicking off. Then later on, because he tweeted that at 9:25 a.m., at 10:11 a.m., he tweeted, Tyler Owens with a diving interception off of a deflection from a receiver who was, again, Georgia Bulldog, Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint. Not great news there, but great news for Tyler Owens. And it resulted in a turnover, of course, because it wasn't an interception. Then Linnell tweeted about it. Tyler Owens is a ball magnet. Another interception off of a drop for the guy. I believe he had one. Was it off of Ben Sinnott? I think Ben Sinnott dropped the pass. That's where Tyler Owens got his interception a few days ago. Then Josh Taylor tweeted about it. Tyler Owens with another interception. He's been having a good training camp. He's just always in position. You're hearing ball magnet. You're hearing always in position. You're hearing playmaker. Come on now. Then you have at Burgundy Blog saying on Twitter, I'm on this Owens cat as the undrafted free agent with the best chance of cracking the roster. Let's get it. I'm loving what I'm hearing, because just a couple of months ago, nobody had faith. Now we'll start. Well, I'm not gonna say nobody, but I love the fact that the Tyler Owens fan club is starting to grow. Let's get it. Y'all already know I'm the president of it. There's no debate there. Really excited about my dog Tyler Owens and the fact that he's making plays, standing out, and increasing his chances of making the roster. I'm already fairly confident that he's going to make the roster, because Logan Paulson even said way early in training camp, like day 1 or day 2 after it, that Tyler Owens has stood out as a special teamser. So he's probably going to make the team just off of that alone. But now that he's also making plays as a safety, I'm not going to call him a roster lock, but out of all of the undrafted free agents, like Burgundy Blog said, I agree, he probably has the best chance out of all of them. And we just talked last night about some of the undrafted free agents that probably have the best chance, like Bryson Tremaine, Tyler Owens, Chiggy Anusium, and all of those guys. Some of the running backs like Michael Wiley and those guys, he may have the best shot. I'm not gonna lie. Now moving on to the special teams part, because this is very important as well. Do not ever click off this video before we get to special teams, because you need to know these updates, and some of these updates are not really good right now. We'll see. But Mason Kinahan pointed out the fact that after a short 11-on-11 session, we had a second punt session of the day. So they really emphasized special teams today. Big time focus today. They had special teams, really quick 11-on-11 session, and got right back to the special teams basically. Then also Mason Kinahan tweeted and updated us on the kicking competition. Ramiz Ahmed missed from 49, but then shortly afterwards, Riley Patterson also missed wide right from 49 as well. And basically, an update from the kicker competition today from Nikki Javala, they both went 4 for 5. Last practice, they went 5 for 5. Made every kick that they were asked to do from a variety of range. Like you had like starting from the 20 all the way back to like a 53-yarder or something like that, with a few kicks in between as far as yardage go. They made every single one of them. And so that the kicker competition neck and neck. Then today, both of them made all of their kicks until they got to their 49-yard one. So maybe not good, but hey, man, that's where we are right now with the kicker competition. But I don't know exactly what Josh Taylor saw so far from practices, but he tweeted, yeah, Riley Patterson is going to be the kicker in my opinion. He has a good leg. So even though right now they're both dead even from 2 practices right now, 9 of 10, if as far as kicks go, something Riley Patterson is doing is standing out to Josh Taylor to where he feels like he'll be the kicker over Ramiz Ahmed. And I'm kind of rooting for that because I already know I don't like Ramiz Ahmed from what I saw from him at the UFL. And so we'll see how that goes. And then before we get up out of here, we have some other reviews from we have my boy Felix Trammell today here. We have Al Galdi. We have my boy Zach Selby. And then we have my boy Mike Hall of the Burgundy Zone. So starting with Felix Trammell, make sure you follow him. He tweeted after practice, quick camp recap today. The heat is on. The position coaches are relentless. Competition is growing. McCaffrey will be a player, as in Luke McCaffrey, the receiver. Fadarian Mathis is on the clock, especially after getting chewed out like that by Daryl Tapp after allowing the biggest run probably of training camp so far. Kicking competition was even, 5 of 6, and this team is ready to hit someone else like we talked about earlier. They are sick of going against each other. They're ready to just let loose and be able to hit another team. I know they're excited. Then moving on to Al Galdi, he said Dan Quinn this week has said Jaden Daniels has had a remarkable start and exceeded expectations, confirmed Brandon Coleman is doing well, indicated Mike Sanverstill is on track to being a nickel cornerback 1, and then he finished up the tweet by saying, what if Adam Peters did in fact kill it in the 2024 draft? That may be a thing. Zach Selby after practice said, we're at the point in camp where fans expect daily updates on certain positions and players, so let's start by just running through them. First of all, Jaden Daniels took all of the starting snaps today, all of them. More on how he did with the reps later. We talked about that earlier. Then Brandon Coleman also took all of the starting snaps at left tackle and looks to have a decent hold on the job, at least until we get to joint practices. So right now, Jaden Daniels is starting to get to the point where he's taking all of the starting snaps, and so is Brandon Coleman. Your starting quarterback, your starting left tackle potentially, let's get it. And then he also continued on to say, the level of contact has increased over the past 2 days with players being in pads, but it's clear that they are ready for a little bit more. I really want to emphasize this, that they are ready to hit somebody else, man. During one-on-one drills, tight end Zach Ertz laid a lick on Sanverstill before running his route. Later in 4-minute drills, Tariq Castro-Fields lowered a shoulder into Armani Rogers. Hey, don't hurt my boy. I like Tariq Castro-Fields, but don't hurt my boy, who took a completed pass out of bounds. Fortunately, hey, he caught it though. Hey, fortunately, they don't have to wait much longer to hit another team. The joint practice between the Commanders and the Jets is just 6 days away. Let's get it, man. Next Thursday, joint practices with the Jets. Of course, I'm gonna have y'all updated on that, just like I have y'all with this. And then lastly, before we get up out of here and move to a lot of random things as well, Mike Hall said the only 3 things I'm worried about going into these joint practices next week with the New York Jets are, 1, everyone coming out of it healthy. That's first and foremost. 2, how does Jaden look 11 on 11s versus the Jets' elite defense? Oh, he didn't say elite, but I just added that on spit because their defense is at least great. And then 3, how does Coleman and the rest of the offensive line look in 11 on 11s versus the Jets' defense, especially the defensive line? They're potentially going to blitz. Can we hand off stunts and things like that? Can we communicate? Do we have chemistry amongst one another? I'm really excited about that as well. And then lastly, before we get up out of here in random news, after practice today, shouts out to Scott Abraham for pointing this out, and this upcoming clip that you're about to see is 37 seconds long, so if you don't care to see it, go ahead and skip ahead like 40 something seconds. But after today's practice, Terry McLaurin was presented with a leadership award from a military service member. Well earned, well deserved. Again, here's that clip here. If you want to skip it, just go ahead and go 37 seconds ahead.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Let's turn it around here. First of all, nice little handshake.
Thank you so much.
Hold it up, sir.
Good. Amazing. Thank you so much. I didn't catch your name.
Nice
to meet you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your service. I get a lot of support out here, but you guys are a real hero. You know what I mean?
Also, Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler are the guys that were on the pivot. Shouts out to all of y'all in the comment sections of my videos that I've been seeing it occasionally, which y'all update me on the fact and reminded me that Jaden Daniels has already been on the pivot, so they were not there for him a couple of days ago. So we went from the pivot with Ryan Clark at practice a few days ago to Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo yesterday to K. Adams, Wale, and a Nats player today. This is a pretty active and pretty famous and celebrity filled of training camp right now. I'm pretty sure KD's on the way to pull up as soon as he's done with this whole Olympus thing. You know he would be the first one there. But I just basically wanted to make the point that Jaden Daniels has already had his pivot interview. They were there for Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz. So if you want to go check that out on the Pivot podcast, I believe that's already released by now. They are the ones that they interviewed, and Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz are basically talking about their times with the previous teams, like Zach Ertz with the Cardinals, and of course Austin Eckler with the Chargers, and how they feel about the Commanders' future coming here together and things like that. And then also, before we get up out of here, Des Bryant had this tweet. Because somebody asked him, what do you think about the Washington receiving core? And also, do you think they'll get Ayuk? He completely ignored the Brandon Ayuk part and just said, hear me out. The Commanders are set up for success. I hate I even feel this way about them, honestly. I'm the biggest NFC East hater. So even somebody that hates the Commanders or really the entire NFC East, even he can admit that we look like we're going to be something special. He went on to finish saying, Commanders have a solid team overall. I got Jaden Daniels winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's coming from Des Bryant. And then also, I updated y'all yesterday that Geno Smith had an injury, and people were saying that he was going to be out indefinitely and that Samuel Cosmi would be the starting quarterback. Well, I wanted to come here and make sure I updated y'all on the fact that that may not necessarily be true. Adam Schefter tweeted, injury update, testing on Seahawks quarterback Geno Smith's knee and hip injuries did not reveal anything significant, and one source said he shouldn't miss any time. So it sounds like Sam Howell is not the starting quarterback so far, and I just wanted to, I know we don't necessarily care about that because this is a Commanders breakdown, but I wanted to make sure I updated y'all on that for sure. And yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Of course, I will have you updated on everything, training camp, every practice, joint practice. I'll be live streaming the preseason games like it's a regular season game, breaking down everything that's going on live with y'all. So make sure you subscribe, hit the bell next to that, and all of that. Do not leave this video without leaving a like. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything. Do you agree or disagree with any of my points? Are there any certain players or position groups you want me to dive deeper into and try to find more information on? Because again, I'm trying to give y'all everything that I see and read so far as like what's going on in training camp, but let me know if there's just any particular players or position groups you want me to do an even deeper dive into and really try to expand upon it. I'm gonna try my best to read and reply to as many comments as possible. And also, before we get up out of here, man, make sure y'all gamble responsibly, please, man. Please. This video was sponsored by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino, and I really want to make sure y'all gamble responsibly. Again, I really appreciate y'all. Do not leave the video without leaving a like. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.